Six Flags Magic Mountain is one of the premier coaster parks. Located in Valencia, California, this park has an insane coaster collection from top to bottom. While this park no longer holds the record for most coasters in a park, a lot of the coasters here are fantastic, with some in the discussion for some of the greatest coasters of all time. Not to mention that this park has a good non-coaster collection and a nice presentation. I recently had the chance to visit Magic Mountain, so today I'll be ranking the coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Before we get started, I first like to note that I didn't get to ride all the coasters here. With a coaster lineup this large, you would expect that not every ride would be open. The one operational ride that was closed during my visit was West Coast Racers. For some reason, this Premier Rides launch coaster was closed that entire day, despite being open both the day before and after. And that's a shame too, because this coaster looks to have a fun layout with that racing element. I'll try to rank it anyways because I'm almost certain it's at least better than a certain other coaster here. I cannot, however, say the same thing for the standing but not operating Superman Escape from Krypton. The other coaster not open during my visit, this Intamin Reverse Freefall, is a tall ride featuring a 100-mile-per-hour launch into a 400-foot spike. It wouldn't be anything noteworthy, but it would have been cool to ride something that big and that fast. However, I will never get to ride it, as back in March of 2025, Six Flags announced Superman will never reopen. Why would I try to rank a ride I know I won't ever get to experience, which is why I'm leaving it off the list. Finally, Magic Mountain is in the middle of constructing a Vekoma thrill glider. Obviously, I'm not going to include it on the list as we don't even know what the layout will be. With that out of the way, let's get started. Number 17, Canyon Cruiser, the E&F Miler kiddie coaster from 1998. The smallest coaster here is wilder than you'd expect. Despite being meant for kids, several of the hills tries to buck you forward. Then the end helix has some pretty good laterals. The fact it does this much already makes it an above average kiddie coaster, and it's one of the better kiddie coasters I've ridden. But despite that, this isn't even the best kiddie coaster at the park. Number 16, Roadrunner Express, the Vekoma Junior coaster from 2000, relocated in 2011. Coming from the flooded Six Flags New Orleans, Roadrunner is a solid junior coaster. It's not as janky, but the helixes are zippy and have some light G-forces. Then the larger size means a longer duration. This is also a great junior coaster for kids to get into coasters and a step up from Canyon Cruiser, but the coasters simply can't stand up to this type of collection. Number 15, Gold Rusher, the aerodynamics mine train from 1971. Originally opening with the park, Gold Rusher is a fine family coaster. While it doesn't hold up to today's innovation, this mine train has some charm to it. Being an early aero, this thing is not smooth, as many of the transitions are jerky. But that's the fun of it, as rumbling on the side of a hill makes for a fun time. And then there are many laterals that make the ride interesting throughout the long ride. It just doesn't have the forces, as outside of it being janky, Gold Rusher is quite forceless. So it simply can't compete with other coasters here with higher forces. Number 14, Great American Revolution, the Schwarzkopf looping coaster from 1976. What an absolute classic for being the first to have a vertical loop. And that loop is intense, as the speed and circular shaping means it packs the intensity. But while the loop has good force, the coaster has some mad pacing issues. The rest of the layout consists of shallow drops, turns, and helix. These drops lack any type of airtime, and the turns don't have any laterals. But at least it's smooth, so you can enjoy cruising on the hillside, which is kinda surprising for a 76 installation, so good job Six Flags for properly maintaining it, even if the coaster may be a bore for the most part. Number 13, Ninja, the aerodynamic suspended coaster from 1988. Another coaster built on the hillside, Ninja's rare suspended system makes the ride. Many of the turns forcefully whip you to the side as the trains swing you laterally, and since you're traversing the hill, the swings only get more aggressive as you build more speed. And thanks to the swinging, the roughness thankfully doesn't hurt, as you won't be bashing into the over-the-shoulder restraints. It's not the most intense since this is supposed to be a family coaster, but the swings does make it more interesting. However, the coaster is somewhat short and the ending is a joke, because after a series of turns, you have to climb up a sizable lift hill just to hit the station. Very anticlimactic ending. Number 12. Viper, the Aerodynamics Mega Looper from 1990. I know a lot of people tends to shit on this Mega Looper for being rough and painful. In their defense, this is not the smoothest, as some of the transitions can rough you up. But I like this coaster, quite a bit actually. First of all, that coaster is massive, and the speed causes some insane positive G-forces on the vertical loops. Then you get this sharp ejector pop into the mid-course. Now this brake slows you to a near stop. This causes some wacky hang time on both the Batwing and double corkscrews. The ending does fall off a cliff with not a whole lot going on, but at least this part doesn't hurt. But I'm not a fan of the hard over-the-shoulder restraints, as the rough track can bash your head and neck. Now, I did find a technique to prevent pain, but it ended up bruising my arms. I simply can't rank it high if I have to ride it in a specific way. Number 11. Scream, the B&M Floorless Coaster from 2003. I know the location is the butt of jokes for being plopped in a parking lot, but it is fun. This has a similar layout to most B&M loopers with the same 7 inversions. The inversions have either some type of positive G's, whip, or laterals, with the highlight being that 0G roll. However, Scream isn't as forceful as the other loopers out there, so the inversions and overall layout don't hit as hard. Also, this coaster doesn't have a noticeable rattle, but thankfully did not cause any pain. Scream is a fine coaster. It just doesn't have the extreme pauses I've come to expect from B&M loopers. Number 10. Riddler's Revenge, the B&M stand-up from 1998. The largest stand-up ever built is also the best traditional stand-up. The layout is a beast with many intense inversions with tons of positives. Then the corkscrews and some of the turns are also very whippy with plenty of snap. This layout is great and way more forceful than Scream, but this coaster runs into similar comfort issues to Viper. These stand-up trains are not the most comfortable, as you have to straddle a bike seat with hard restraints. If you're not careful, Riddler can destroy your head, your legs, and your nuts if you're a guy. There's a reason some call this the diddler, because your groin will feel like it's been diddled. So it isn't exactly the most comfortable. Number 9. Goliath, the Juvenile Hypercoaster from 2000. For being such a massive ride, this thing confuses me. This thing is a monster with massive elements and a long layout. However, Goliath has major pacing issues. A lot of elements don't do anything, as they're simply way too drawn out. For a drop of that scale, it should not have as little force as it did. Aside from this hill with the mildest of floater, you can forget any airtime on this ride. This does have some positives, as in the second half has some decently forceful turns and a G-force heavy helix, but this is negated by an atrocious mid-course brake run that slows you to a near crawl. This results in reduced speed and forces in the second half. One thing I at least do like is that it's very smooth and comfortable, but that doesn't do you good when there's little forces for me to enjoy on a ride this big. Number 8. Full Throttle, the premier ride Skyrocket 3 from 2013. A variation of the Skyrocket layout, this premier creation has a really short layout. The coaster is really only known for that massive vertical loop, and that loop is great. You get a boatload of hang time as you dangle on that loop for several seconds. Then there's the drop right above the loop that has 2 distinct bursts of ejector airtime. However, the coaster doesn't have a lot of substance to it. The following S-bend does nothing. That dive loop is decent with solid hang time and whip, but then that second backwards launch was kinda pointless and didn't have much kick. Or that first half for that matter. The launches here are really weak. There's simply not enough quality elements for it to stand out. The elements it does have are good with a couple good inversions, but you can only do so much with so little. Not to mention the trains are terrible. The lap bars are fine, but there's a severe lack of room in them. So not only do they feel claustrophobic, they are a pain to get in and out of. Number 7. West Coast Racers, the premier ride's custom Skyrocket from 2020. Even though this wasn't open during my visit, I almost guarantee it's at least better than Full Throttle. Whereas Full Throttle is short and only has a couple good elements, West Coast has a much more varied layout. The launches would have been okay, but those inversions, airtime, and helix probably would have had some good forces, especially the high 5 and Top Gun stall. Then, because of how it's set up, you essentially get to do it twice, and you're guaranteed a duel every time. The one thing Full Throttle has over West Coast Racers are the restraints. This also uses the same sucky trains, but it also has the annoying comfort collars. They don't hinder the ride, but it makes getting in and out of it even more of a pain. Number 6. Batman the Ride, the B&M invert from 1994. Despite not being an original ride, Batman is very punchy with many intense elements. While the layout may be short, it has some positive G-filled loops then the twister sections have snappy turns and whippy corkscrews, complemented with a snappy 0G roll. You will feel the blood rush to your feet with all that G-force. It's surprisingly more forceful than the larger B&Ms next door, and unlike the two larger B&Ms earlier on this list, it's extremely smooth with no hint of a rattle. The shorter layout means it can't compete with larger inverts with similar intensity like Montu or Afterburn, but Batman is still a great ride that runs really well for its age. Number 5. Apocalypse, the GCI wooden coaster from 2009. Probably the roughest coaster here, Apocalypse still packs a punch. This GCI rips through its layout with a ton of aggressiveness to it. The first half flies through these banked speed hills and overbanks with pretty good laterals, so you just get slammed on the turns to the side. Then in typical GCI fashion, the coaster has quick pops scattered in the layout. I particularly like the first drop with how it's profiled between the airtime and laterals. Now the second half following the station flyby gets significantly weaker. You still feel the speed and laterals, but the airtime is nowhere to be found. Also, this ride is rather bipolar with how it runs. This was probably the roughest coaster in the park as it shakes violently throughout the course. This felt noticeably shakier than Ghost Rider and Gold Striker despite being less intense. Luckily, the Millennium Flyers does help with the comfort issues as they take up a lot of the blows. This is a solid wood coaster with an aggressive bark to it. If they can get a full retrack and some reprofiling, this could be an upper tier wood coaster. Number 4. Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, the RMC Raptor from 2022. The newest major coaster here, this single rail is a buffet of airtime. The first half consists of sustained camelbacks and floaty inversions. You have inversions that throw in hang time with a kick of laterals and airtime. Then the camelback and far turnaround have some good ejector, but it doesn't feel that forceful. Then the second half has these off-axis hills that try to tilt you. You still feel the airtime, but you can tell it feels weak. Wonder Woman has some pacing issues as it feels like the coaster is running rather slow, leading to the elements not hitting as hard, and it's probably because it was running slow. The day I went to Magic Mountain, it was freezing cold outside with some strong winds. It felt like I was one of the soldiers surviving on Valley Forge. On top of that, this was a morning ride where it had zero time to speed up. The park actually had to hold the train for more people to ride because of how slow it was running. So maybe if I ride it again, it will ride better, but for now, the awkward pacing keeps it out of the top 3. Number 3. Tatsu, the B&M flying coaster from 2006. The tallest flying coaster in the world is also the best in the States. Tatsu uses the flying trains to the fullest by traversing graceful elements that make you feel like you're flying. On the rolls, you feel that whip and snappiness, and the overbanks have some force. But then the ride tries to kill you with the world's largest pretzel loop. These elements are already intense as the profiling and speed will plant your face down into the headrest from the positives. But since this one is 124 feet, 38 meters tall, you have way more positives trying to plant you into the ground. It is one of the most intense elements I've ever felt. But even without that loop, the ride is already freaky as most of the coaster sits high above the ground. And in the flying position where you're facing the ground, it's kinda scary. The only downside is that the flying position can get uncomfortable on the brakes due to the slow operations. Number 2. Twisted Colossus, the RMC iBox coaster from 2015. What a fantastic design, as it's essentially 2 layouts in one. This RMC is a quasi-Mobius like West Coast Racers, where it's a racing coaster, so the trains are side by side, except the 2 tracks are connected and you complete it in one round. As you can imagine, Colossus has a lot of prime ride time, broken up by a slow chain lift. Unfortunately, Six Flags' slow operations make it near impossible to get a duel unlike West Coast Racers, and as you can imagine, I didn't get a duel. Luckily, the layout is strong enough that I still find it elite without it. The inversions are great with a hang time filled Top Gun stall and snappy roll. Then there's an array of ejector airtime throughout the long ride time, whether that be sustained camelbacks, smaller bunny hills, fast speed hills, or off-axis high 5 elements. There's a lot of ejector on here. Unfortunately, there is a massive dead spot with that second lift hill to do the green side, and that chain is even slower than a normal RMC lift to try to get a duel. That was not going to happen when Six Flags stacked 3 trains, which I don't even know how you do that on a ride this long. But this is still an elite coaster, and it would be the best at a lot of other parks had I not ridden a monster on the other side of the park. Number 1. X2, the Aerodynamics 4th Dimension coaster from 2002. It's rare that a non-airtime coaster is the best in the park, let alone the state, but X2 has some of the craziest positive G-forces of any coaster. This has to do with the flipping seats of X2, where the 360 barrel roll aspects create some of the wildest moments I've ever felt. That first drop is fucking wild as the speed and flipping tries to rip your face into the ground. It is the most chaotic element I've ever felt. But then the other flipping elements are also disorienting, as the track is doing one thing and your seat is doing another thing. And then the Raven turns are hella intense with a shit ton of positives. There is a dead spot with a high turnaround, which does disrupt the pacing. And because of the wild forces, this thing is not smooth, as you will shake around quite a bit, especially on the Raven turns. Also, I did hear that the outside seats are significantly rougher, but I didn't ride in that seat. Not everyone will enjoy this ride due to the raw intensity, but if you like this type of intensity, X2 is for you. You won't find another coaster like it outside of East Asia, and it's truly one of a kind. So that is my ranking of the coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain. If you cared enough to watch to this point, please do me a favor and do these points shown on screen. That way this video makes it to way more viewers and you'll be alerted next time I upload a video. Finally, watch more of these bangers shown on screen. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.